Rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Imperial Crown Hotel as Seoul's skyline glowed beneath a blanket of dark clouds. From the 63rd floor, the city looked untouchable, powerful, the kind of place where fortunes were made with a handshake and destroyed with a single phone call. Inside the hotel, men worth billions of dollars moved through marble hallways surrounded by bodyguards and assistants. Nobody noticed the woman pushing a cleaning cart toward the service elevator. And that was exactly how Aisha Carter preferred it. For 5 years, she had worked as a janitor at the Imperial Crown. 5 years of polishing floors. 5 years of emptying trash bins. 5 years of watching powerful people walk past her without ever making eye contact. Most guests treated her like part of the furniture, an object, something that existed but didn't matter. Aisha had learned not to take it personally. The wealthy often suffered from the same condition. They only saw people they believed were important. Everyone else became invisible. Tonight, however, the atmosphere felt different. The tension was impossible to ignore. Security guards stood at every entrance. Hotel managers rushed through the lobby speaking into radios. Even the concierge staff seemed nervous. Something big was happening. Aisha noticed it immediately. Invisible people always notice things. She was wiping fingerprints from a glass partition when 2 executives hurried past. Has the conference suite been secured? Twice. And the guest list? Verified. What about hotel staff? No one gets near the room. The men disappeared around a corner. Aisha continued cleaning, but now she was paying attention. An hour later, the answer arrived. A convoy of black Mercedes Maybachs rolled beneath the hotel's entrance canopy. Valets froze. Security teams moved into position. Conversations stopped. Then the rear passenger door opened. Kang Dae-hyun stepped out. Even people who had never met him recognized him instantly. His reputation reached places his name never did. Some called him a businessman. Others called him a kingmaker. The people who truly knew him used a different word. Dangerous. He adjusted the sleeve of his tailored black suit and walked toward the entrance. Bodyguards surrounded him. Hotel managers practically tripped over themselves trying to greet him. Meanwhile, Aisha continued mopping the floor 20 feet away. Invisible. Just another employee. At least, that's what everyone thought. As Kang Dae-hyun entered the elevator with his entourage, something caught her attention. Not him. The translator. A thin man carrying a leather briefcase. Unlike everyone else, the translator looked terrified. His hands shook. His eyes never stopped moving. And when the elevator doors closed, he looked like a man heading toward his own execution. Aisha didn't know why, but she remembered his face. An hour later, she was assigned to clean the hallway outside the executive conference suite. Normally, she would have welcomed the quiet. Tonight felt different. The corridor was unusually tense. 2 armed security guards stood outside the meeting room. The doors remained closed. Voices drifted through the walls. Aisha pushed her cart slowly along the hallway. The guards ignored her. Nobody ever paid attention to the janitor. As she worked, fragments of conversation escaped through the partially opened conference room door. The voices were speaking Korean, a language Aisha understood perfectly, not because she had studied it online, not because she had taken a few classes, because she had once spent more than a decade living in Seoul. A life she rarely talked about, a life nobody inside this hotel knew existed. She wasn't trying to listen, at first. Then she heard something strange. A businessman inside the room spoke in Korean. The translator immediately repeated the statement in English. Aisha frowned. That wasn't what the man had said. Not even close. She paused. Maybe she had misheard. The meeting continued. Another executive spoke. Again, the translator changed the meaning. This time there was no doubt. The translation was wrong. Completely wrong. Aisha slowly resumed cleaning. Her heartbeat quickened. Inside the room, the discussion became more intense. Numbers were exchanged. Agreements were proposed. Millions of dollars hung in the balance. And every few minutes, the translator twisted another sentence, changed another detail, altered another meaning. The worst part wasn't that he was lying. It was how confident he seemed doing it, as if he had done this before. Many times. Aisha kept her head down, kept moving, kept listening. Then she heard the sentence that changed everything. A senior executive leaned forward and spoke carefully. His voice carried clearly through the gap in the door. The message was simple, direct, impossible to misunderstand, and yet the translator turned it into something entirely different. Aisha nearly dropped the cloth in her hand, because the lie wasn't about money. It wasn't about contracts. It wasn't about business. It was about betrayal. Someone inside that room was being set up, someone powerful, someone dangerous, someone who would not forgive what was happening. A cold feeling crawled up her spine. For the first time all night, she stopped cleaning. Inside the conference room, chairs shifted, voices lowered. The conversation became harder to hear. Then another sentence reached her ears. And this one was worse, much worse. Aisha's eyes widened, because she suddenly understood something terrifying. The translator wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting someone else, someone sitting at that table, someone close enough to Kang Dae-hyun to destroy him from the inside. Aisha stared at the conference room door. The rain continued pounding against the windows. The city lights flickered below, and for the first time in 5 years, the invisible janitor found herself standing in the middle of a secret that could get people killed. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications, because what Aisha was about to discover would place her directly in the path of some of the most dangerous men in Seoul. Inside the room, a chair scraped against the floor. Footsteps approached the door. Aisha's heart skipped. Someone was coming out, and if they caught her standing there now, they might start asking questions she couldn't afford to answer. The conference room door swung open before Aisha could move. She immediately lowered her head and reached for her cleaning cart. Years of experience had taught her one simple rule. The less attention people paid to you, the safer you were. A pair of expensive Italian dress shoes stepped into the hallway. Then another. Aisha focused on wiping an already spotless section of marble flooring. The men barely glanced at her. They were too busy arguing. The first businessman spoke rapidly in Korean. The numbers don't make sense. The second man replied in a lower voice. They'll make sense once the acquisition is complete. The first man didn't look convinced. Aisha kept her eyes down. The conversation continued as the two men disappeared toward the elevator. Only when they were gone did she allow herself to breathe normally again. A moment later, the conference room door closed. The meeting resumed, and so did the lies. Aisha slowly pushed her cart farther down the hallway, close enough to hear, far enough not to appear suspicious. Inside the room, Kang Dae-hyun remained silent for long stretches. When he finally spoke, everyone listened. His voice carried authority, confidence, the kind of confidence that came from spending decades getting exactly what you wanted. The translator repeated his words in English. This time the translation sounded accurate. Aisha frowned. Interesting. So he wasn't changing everything, only certain parts, which meant the lies were intentional, selective, calculated. That made them far more dangerous. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes. By then, Aisha had noticed a pattern. Every time financial projections were discussed, the translator remained truthful. Every time investment figures appeared on the screen, the translation remained accurate. But whenever certain individuals were mentioned, the story changed. Names disappeared. Warnings vanished. Concerns became praise. Questions became approval. Someone was manipulating the conversation very carefully, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Then something unexpected happened. A chair scraped across the floor. Several people stood. The meeting appeared to be ending. Aisha immediately turned her cart around and headed toward the service corridor. The last thing she needed was to be standing outside the room when everyone exited. She had almost reached the corner when voices stopped her. Two men had stepped out onto a private balcony connected to the conference suite. Their conversation drifted through the partially opened glass door. Neither realized anyone could hear them. Aisha froze. One voice belonged to the translator. The other did not. "How much longer?" the second man asked. The translator sounded nervous. "Not much. You said that last month. I'm doing everything I can. You need to do more." A long silence followed. Rain tapped softly against the glass. Then the second man spoke again, and his tone carried a warning. "If Kong discovers what's happening, we're both dead." Aisha felt a chill run through her body. The translator swallowed audibly. "He won't. You sound very confident. He trusts me." The second man laughed, not because something was funny, because something was dangerous. "Everyone trusts you." More silence. Then came a sentence that made Aisha's heart pound. "The transfer will happen after the signing ceremony." The translator lowered his voice. "What about the accounts?" "They're already prepared." "And the lieutenant?" "He's fully committed." Aisha's eyes narrowed. "Lieutenant? What lieutenant?" The translator seemed equally concerned. "Are you sure about him?" "He's the one who started this." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Aisha listened carefully. Every instinct told her she was hearing something she wasn't supposed to hear. The second man continued. "Without him, none of this would be possible." The translator exhaled. "And after it's done?" The answer came immediately. "Kang Dae-hyun loses everything." Aisha nearly dropped her cleaning cloth, not because of what was said, because of how casually it was said, as if destroying one of the most powerful men in South Korea was merely another business transaction. The balcony door slid open. Footsteps approached. Aisha immediately pushed her cart into the service hallway and disappeared around the corner. Seconds later, the two men emerged. One of them was the translator. The other was a man Aisha had never seen before. Tall, immaculately dressed, confident, the type of man who expected every room to belong to him. As they walked past, the stranger glanced briefly toward the service corridor. Their eyes almost met. Almost. Aisha remained perfectly still. The man continued walking. A few moments later, the elevator doors closed behind them. Only then did she step back into the hallway. Something was very wrong. Far worse than a dishonest translator. There was a conspiracy, a large one, and somehow it involved someone close enough to Kang Dae-hyun to be referred to simply as the lieutenant. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just betraying the Mafia boss. He was helping orchestrate his downfall. Aisha looked toward the conference suite. The lights inside were beginning to shut off. The meeting was over. She should have gone home, forgotten everything she heard, pretended none of it happened. That would have been the smart thing to do. Instead, she found herself walking toward the conference room, toward the secrets, toward the danger, because one question refused to leave her mind. Who was the lieutenant? Then she stepped inside the now empty conference room. At first, everything looked normal. until she noticed a single document lying beneath the table, a document someone had accidentally left behind, and written across the top of the page was a name that made her blood run cold, because she recognized it immediately. The game had just changed, because now someone knew she was listening. Aisha immediately looked away. Years of experience taught her that panic attracted attention. Calmness made people underestimate you. So she pushed her cleaning cart toward the west elevator as though nothing had happened, as though the translator wasn't standing on the balcony watching her, as though her heart wasn't pounding against her ribs. The moment she disappeared into the elevator, she released a slow breath. The doors closed. For the first time all morning, she was alone. Or at least she hoped she was. The elevator descended toward the service levels. Aisha replayed the moment in her head. The translator had recognized her. She was certain of it. The look in his eyes wasn't random. It was the look of a man connecting pieces together. The look of a man realizing a witness existed. That realization terrified her, because witnesses had a habit of becoming problems, and problems had a habit of disappearing. The elevator doors opened. Aisha stepped into the service corridor and headed toward the housekeeping department. Several employees greeted her. She smiled and greeted them back. Outwardly, everything seemed normal. Inside, her mind was racing. At lunchtime, she sat alone in the employee cafeteria. Normally, she enjoyed the quiet. Today, she couldn't focus on her food. Every person entering the room made her glance up. Every unfamiliar face caught her attention. Every sound made her wonder whether someone was watching. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe the translator had simply looked in her direction. Maybe Aisha. She looked up. Mina sat down across from her, carrying a tray. The younger woman immediately frowned. "You look terrible." Aisha laughed softly. "Thanks. I'm serious. Just tired." "No." Mina leaned forward. "Something's wrong." Aisha considered telling her. For a moment, she almost did. Then she remembered the document. The translator. Han Sung-min. Kang Dae-hyun. The conspiracy. No. The fewer people involved, the better. "I'm fine." Mina clearly didn't believe her, but she didn't push. Instead, she changed the subject. "Did you hear about the signing ceremony next week?" Aisha froze. "What about it?" "It's apparently a huge deal." Mina lowered her voice. "Management has everyone working overtime." Aisha forced herself to sound casual. "Really? They say investors are flying in from all over Asia." The younger woman shrugged. "Whatever they're signing must be worth billions." Aisha's stomach tightened. Billions. The document. The dates. The secret meetings. Everything connected back to the signing ceremony. Whatever was planned would happen there. The question remained the same. What exactly was the plan? The answer arrived sooner than she expected. Later that evening, Aisha was assigned to clean a private executive lounge on the 49th floor. The room was usually empty. Tonight it wasn't. As she approached the hallway, voices echoed through the partially opened door. Aisha immediately recognized one of them, Han Sung-min. She stopped, not close enough to appear suspicious, close enough to hear. Inside the lounge, Han sounded frustrated. "This is becoming a problem." Another voice answered. "The translator." "We don't know that." "She took something." Aisha's pulse spiked. The room fell silent. Then Han spoke again. "The document is missing." Aisha felt the blood drain from her face. They knew, not who took it, but they knew it was gone. The translator lowered his voice. "Are you certain?" "I searched the room myself." A long pause followed. Then came the sentence that made Aisha's stomach drop. What if she read it? The translator didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded uneasy. Then we have a bigger problem. Aisha stepped backward, carefully, quietly. Every instinct screamed at her to leave. Now, inside the room, Han continued speaking. We should deal with it before the ceremony. Deal with it, not investigate it, not report it. Deal with it. The phrase chilled her, because men like Han rarely used vague language by accident. Aisha turned the corner and quickly pushed her cart toward the elevators. She needed distance. She needed time to think. Most importantly, she needed to stop carrying that document. Keeping it felt increasingly dangerous. By the time her shift ended, the decision had been made. She would create copies, hide them, then get rid of the original. If anything happened to her, there needed to be evidence. That night, she stopped at a 24-hour copy center. The young employee behind the counter barely looked up as she made duplicates. 10 minutes later, she left with 3 copies. One stayed inside her apartment, one went into a locker at a train station, and the third remained hidden inside the trunk of her car. Only then did she destroy the original. For the first time in 2 days, she felt slightly safer. Slightly. The feeling didn't last. The following morning, she walked into the hotel parking garage and immediately knew something was wrong. Her car door was slightly open, just enough to notice. Aisha stopped. Her heart pounded. She distinctly remembered locking it. Slowly, she approached. The interior looked untouched. Nothing appeared stolen. No visible damage. No signs of forced entry. Yet someone had definitely been inside. Then she noticed it. A small folded piece of paper resting on the driver's seat. Aisha stared at it. For several seconds, she didn't move. Finally, she reached inside and unfolded it. Only 4 words were written on the page. We know what happened. Her blood ran cold. No signature. No explanation. Just 4 words. And suddenly every fear she had been trying to dismiss became real. Someone was watching her. Someone knew about the missing document. And someone wanted her to know they were aware of it. For several moments, she stood frozen beside the car. Then a new realization hit her. The copies. She immediately checked the train station locker key, hidden in her purse. Still there. The copy inside her apartment was untouched. The trunk key remained in her possession. Whoever sent the message didn't know everything. Not yet. That gave her an advantage. A small one, but an advantage nonetheless. As she folded the note and slipped it into her pocket, movement caught her eye. A black luxury sedan sat at the far end of the parking garage. Its windows were tinted. Its engine was running. And behind the wheel, a figure watched her from the shadows. Aisha couldn't see the driver's face. But she didn't need to, because when the sedan slowly pulled away, she caught a glimpse of the passenger, the translator. And he wasn't looking frightened anymore. He was looking determined, like a man who had finally been given instructions. And whatever those instructions were, Aisha had a feeling she wasn't going to like them. And whatever those instructions were, Aisha had a feeling she wasn't going to like them. For the rest of the day, the image of the translator sitting inside that black sedan refused to leave her mind. The fear in his eyes was gone. In its place was something much more dangerous. Purpose. Men who were afraid made mistakes. Men with purpose followed orders. And Aisha suspected someone had just given him new ones. By Thursday morning, the atmosphere inside the Imperial Crown Hotel had changed. The signing ceremony was only 5 days away. Executives arrived at all hours. Security had doubled. Entire floors were being prepared for visiting investors. Everyone seemed busy. Everyone except Aisha, because while the hotel focused on the ceremony, She focused on survival. Every hallway suddenly felt different. Every conversation felt loaded with meaning. Every glance felt suspicious. It wasn't paranoia anymore. Someone had left a warning inside her car. Someone wanted her afraid. The problem was the warning had the opposite effect. It made her curious. And curiosity had always been her greatest weakness. Late that afternoon, Aisha was assigned to clean the executive archives room. Most employees hated the assignment. The room was dusty, cramped, and filled with decades of paperwork. Aisha loved it. Nobody ever went there. And today, she needed somewhere quiet to think. She pushed her cart between rows of filing cabinets and closed the door behind her. For nearly an hour, she worked alone. The silence helped until she noticed something unusual. A light near the back wall. A door stood slightly open. She frowned. The archives room only had one entrance. Or so she thought. Curious, she moved closer. Behind the door sat a narrow staircase. Old, unused, hidden. Aisha stared at it. Then she noticed a faint layer of dust had recently been disturbed. Someone had used the stairs. Recently, very recently. Most people would have ignored it. Aisha didn't. She quietly stepped inside. The staircase descended 2 floors. At the bottom, she found another door. Unlike the one upstairs, this one looked modern. New electronic lock. Fresh paint. No sign indicating what lay beyond it. Aisha hesitated. Then voices drifted through the door. Immediately, she froze. One voice belonged to Han Sung-min. The other belonged to someone she had never heard before. You promised me the transfer would be complete. It will be. It needs to happen before Kong signs. It will. The conversation continued. Aisha pressed closer. The stranger sounded angry, nervous, desperate. Han sounded calm, almost amused. Then came a sentence that made her heart stop. Kong isn't the target. The stranger paused. What? Kong is the distraction. For several seconds, silence filled the room. Then the stranger laughed. You've got to be kidding. I'm not. Aisha's pulse accelerated. Kong Dae-hyun wasn't the target. Everything she had heard suggested otherwise. Inside the room, Han continued speaking. The money is important. The company is important. But neither is the real objective. What is? A chair scraped across the floor. Then Han lowered his voice. Unfortunately, not low enough. The list. Aisha frowned. The list? What list? The stranger sounded confused too. Why is everyone obsessed with that list? Han's answer came immediately. Because whoever controls, it controls everything. Aisha's mind raced. The list, whatever it was, it mattered more than billions of dollars. More than corporate acquisitions. More than destroying Kong Dae-hyun. That realization terrified her, because it meant she had only seen part of the picture. The conspiracy was larger than she imagined. Far larger. Then she heard another familiar voice. The translator. Aisha nearly jumped. She hadn't heard him enter. The investors have arrived. Han sighed. Any issues? The translator hesitated. One. The room became quiet. Han's voice hardened. Aisha Carter. Her blood froze. For the first time, they said her name. Not the janitor. Not the employee. Her actual name. The translator continued. I think she knows more than we're assuming. The stranger immediately responded. Then remove her. The words came so casually, so effortlessly, as if they were discussing a scheduling conflict, not a human life. Han remained silent for several seconds. Then he said something that surprised everyone, including Aisha. No, the stranger sounded confused. No, not yet. Why not? Han exhaled slowly. Because if she copied the document, Removing her creates more problems. The room fell silent. Aisha's stomach tightened. Han was smarter than she thought. Much smarter. He had already considered the possibility of copies. The translator spoke again. So what do we do? A smile crept into Han's voice. Even through the door, Aisha could hear it. We find out how much she knows. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to leave. Now, immediately, before the conversation continued, before someone opened the door, before her luck finally ran out, she turned carefully, one step, then another, then another. The staircase creaked, a tiny sound, barely audible, but inside the room, the conversation stopped instantly. Aisha froze. Complete silence. Then came a voice. Did you hear that? The translator. Another pause. Then footsteps. Approaching the door. Aisha's heart hammered violently. The electronic lock clicked. Someone was opening it. She spun around and raced up the staircase. No longer caring about noise. No longer caring about caution. Behind her, the door burst open. A man's voice echoed through the stairwell. Someone's here. Aisha reached the top landing. Her breath came in short bursts. She pushed through the archives room door. Footsteps thundered below. Fast. Getting closer. She grabbed her cleaning cart and shoved it into motion. The hallway ahead stretched endlessly. Employees moved in the distance. Too far away. Not close enough to help. Aisha rounded the corner, then froze, because standing directly in front of her was Kang Dae-hyun himself. Surrounded by bodyguards, the powerful Mafia boss stared at her, then looked past her, toward the hallway she had just exited, toward the men chasing her, and, for the briefest moment, Aisha saw confusion appear in his eyes, because the people pursuing her weren't supposed to be running from her. They were supposed to be working for him. Yet, somehow, they looked terrified that she might reach him first. Yet, somehow, they looked terrified that she might reach him first. Aisha's mind raced. Everything happened in seconds. The bodyguards immediately noticed the commotion. Hands moved toward concealed weapons. Eyes scanned the hallway. The men chasing her slowed, abruptly, too abruptly, as if they suddenly realized they had made a mistake. Han Sung-min appeared at the far end of the corridor. His face remained calm, professional, controlled, but his eyes told a different story. For the first time, Aisha saw genuine concern. Not concern for her, concern for the situation, because she was standing directly in front of Kang Dae-hyun, the one man they couldn't afford for her to speak to. Not yet. Kang glanced from Aisha to the approaching men, then back to her. You seem in a hurry. His voice was calm, measured, the kind of voice that rarely needed to be raised. Aisha opened her mouth, then hesitated. What was she supposed to say? Tell one of South Korea's most feared men that people inside his own organization were plotting against him? Tell him she had been eavesdropping on secret meetings? Tell him his trusted allies might be preparing to destroy him? No, not here. Not in a crowded hallway. Not without proof. Unfortunately, Han solved the problem for her. He stepped forward with a warm smile. Mr. Kang, my apologies. Kang turned. Han continued. One of our employees accidentally entered a restricted area. Aisha felt her stomach tighten. Han didn't even glance at her. His performance was flawless, calm, professional, believable. The bodyguards visibly relaxed. The tension eased. Everyone except Aisha, because she knew it was a lie, and Han knew she knew. Kang studied her carefully. Something about him made Aisha uncomfortable, not because he was intimidating, because he was observant, far more observant than she expected. Most powerful men ignored people like her. Kang didn't. For several seconds, he simply looked at her. Then he asked a question. What is your name? The hallway went silent. Aisha noticed Han's expression tighten. Only slightly, but enough. Aisha Carter. Kang nodded, then surprised everyone, including her. How long have you worked here? 5 years. Do you like it? The question caught her off guard. She blinked. Yes. Kang smiled faintly. A rare answer. A few people chuckled nervously. Han didn't. Kang glanced at his watch, then looked toward the conference room. We're late. The moment passed. Just like that, the bodyguards moved. Executives followed. Within seconds, the hallway returned to normal, except for one thing. As Kang walked away, he looked back once, directly at Aisha, as if trying to remember her, as if sensing something wasn't right. Then he disappeared around the corner. The opportunity was gone. And, judging by Han's expression, so was her margin for error. The moment Kang vanished, Han's smile disappeared. The transformation was immediate, cold, calculated, dangerous. Miss Carter. His voice remained polite, but there was steel underneath it. We should talk. Every instinct told her to refuse. Unfortunately, refusing wasn't an option. 10 minutes later, Aisha found herself sitting inside Han's office. The room overlooked the Seoul skyline. Expensive artwork decorated the walls. Everything about the office screamed power. Han sat behind his desk. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled. I've always liked you. Aisha remained silent. You work hard. Still silent. Reliable. Nothing. Han leaned back. The smile faded. Let's stop wasting time. The sudden change sent a chill through her body. He opened a drawer, removed a photograph, and slid it across the desk. Aisha looked down. Her blood ran cold. The photograph showed her standing outside the conference room 3 nights earlier, listening. Someone had taken a picture. Someone had been watching her all along. Han folded his hands. You've been asking questions. Aisha forced herself to stay calm. I don't know what you're talking about. Han laughed. Not because something was funny, because the lie was insulting. You're intelligent. He tapped the photograph. Don't pretend otherwise. A long silence followed. Then Han said something unexpected. Do you know why you're still alive? Aisha stared at him. The question sounded less like a threat and more like a fact. Han continued, because I convinced certain people not to panic. The room suddenly felt colder. Certain people? Han nodded. People who make permanent decisions. The meaning was crystal clear. Aisha felt her pulse accelerate. Han stood, walked toward the window, and looked out over the city. You've become involved in something much larger than you understand. I didn't ask to be involved. No. He nodded. You didn't. The answer surprised her. For the first time, Han sounded sincere, almost regretful. Then he turned, and whatever sympathy existed vanished instantly. You found a document. Aisha's heart skipped. Han smiled. There it is. She immediately realized her mistake. The reaction, the hesitation. He saw it, every bit of it. Han slowly returned to his desk. You know what's interesting? Aisha said nothing. The document wasn't important. She frowned. Han continued. It was bait. The words hit her like a punch. Bait. What? The real information was elsewhere. Aisha stared at him, trying to determine whether he was lying, trying to understand what game he was playing. Han seemed amused by her confusion. People always take the bait. His smile widened. They always think they found the secret. For the first time in days, genuine fear settled into Aisha's chest. Because if Han was telling the truth, then everything she risked herself for might have been a distraction. And if the document was bait, what exactly was the real secret? A knock interrupted the conversation. Han looked irritated. "Come in." The office door opened. One of his assistants entered. The young man appeared nervous, very nervous. "Sir." Han frowned. "What is it?" The assistant swallowed, then delivered the sentence that changed everything. "Kang Dae-hyun is demanding an emergency meeting." The room went silent. Han's expression hardened. "Why?" The assistant looked pale. "We don't know." For the first time since entering the office, Aisha saw fear appear on Han Sungmin's face. Real fear, the kind powerful men couldn't fake, because somewhere inside the hotel, something had happened, something serious enough to make Kang Dae-hyun cancel his entire schedule. And whatever it was, Han clearly hadn't expected it. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The assistant remained frozen near the door. Han stood beside his desk, staring at him. Aisha watched carefully. This was the first crack she had seen in Han Sungmin's armor. The first moment where the calm, calculated executive appeared genuinely unsettled. "What exactly did Mr. Kang say?" Han asked. The assistant swallowed. "He wants everyone present." "Everyone?" "Yes, sir." Han's eyes narrowed. "Who else knows?" "Most of the executive floor, by now." The assistant hesitated. And what?" "Kang seems angry." The room fell silent. Aisha noticed something strange. Han wasn't asking what had happened. He was asking who knew about it. That told her everything. Whatever this was, Han's first concern wasn't the problem itself. It was exposure. The assistant quickly left. The office door closed. Han remained motionless. Then, slowly, he looked toward Aisha. The fear vanished from his face, replaced once again by control. "You should go back to work." Aisha stood. Neither of them mentioned the conversation they had just had. Neither mentioned the document, the photograph, the bait, the threats. But as she reached the door, Han spoke. One final sentence. "Aisha." She stopped, without turning around. "Be careful where your curiosity takes you." The warning hung in the air. Then she left. For the next 2 hours, the entire hotel felt different. Employees whispered. Executives rushed through hallways. Security personnel appeared in unusual places. Nobody knew what was happening, but everyone knew something was wrong. Around 4 o'clock, Aisha received an unexpected assignment. The executive conference floor. Again, she immediately became suspicious. Normally, housekeeping rotations prevented the same employee from repeatedly servicing sensitive areas. Yet this was the third time she'd been sent there in a week. Either someone wanted her there, or someone wanted to watch her. Neither possibility made her comfortable. As she stepped off the elevator, she immediately noticed the tension. Bodyguards lined the hallway. Several senior executives stood outside the conference suite. Their expressions were grim. Aisha pushed her cleaning cart slowly toward a service alcove. Invisible, observing, listening. The conference room doors suddenly opened. Several businessmen emerged. Their faces looked pale. One man appeared furious. Another looked terrified. A third immediately pulled out his phone and began making calls. Something had gone terribly wrong. Then Kang Dae-hyun appeared. The hallway instantly fell silent. Aisha studied him carefully. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, which somehow felt worse. A bodyguard leaned toward him. Kang waved him away. Then he spoke, not loudly, but loudly enough for several people nearby to hear. "Find him." The bodyguard nodded immediately. Kang continued walking. "Bring him to me." Aisha felt a chill run through her body. Bring who? The answer arrived moments later. 2 executives began whispering nearby. The accountant disappeared. "What? This morning? How?" No one knows. Aisha's pulse quickened. Accountant, another executive joined the conversation. The internal auditor is missing too. Now her heartbeat doubled. Missing? Both of them? The men continued speaking. The files are gone. All of them. Everything. The conversation stopped when security approached, but Aisha had already heard enough. Files. Auditors. Accountants. Something major had happened. Something involving financial records. And judging by the panic spreading through the executive floor, it wasn't supposed to happen yet. That evening, Aisha couldn't stop thinking about one sentence. The list, the words echoed in her mind, because whoever controls it controls everything. At the time, she assumed it was money. Now, she wasn't so sure. She returned to her apartment shortly after sunset. For nearly an hour, she sat at her kitchen table, reviewing everything she knew. The translator, Han, the missing document, the signing ceremony, the disappearing accountants, the mysterious list. Nothing fit together, at least not yet. Then her phone rang. Aisha frowned. Very few people called her directly, especially this late. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. For several seconds, she considered ignoring it. Then she answered. Hello. Silence. Aisha frowned. Hello. A voice finally responded. A male voice. Low, nervous, and instantly familiar. The translator. Aisha sat upright. The room suddenly felt smaller. The translator spoke quickly, as though he was afraid someone might overhear. You need to listen carefully. Aisha remained silent. You don't have much time. Her pulse accelerated. What do you want? The translator ignored the question. They know about the copies. Every muscle in her body tightened. The copies. How? Only she knew where they were hidden. Unless. No. Impossible. The translator continued. You're being watched. Aisha stood from her chair. What do you mean? They know about the apartment. Her blood ran cold. They know about the train station locker. The phone nearly slipped from her hand. And they know about the car. Aisha couldn't breathe. How? How could they possibly know? The translator lowered his voice. They have access to things you don't understand. What do you want from me? The answer came immediately. To keep you alive. Aisha froze. The statement sounded genuine, desperate, unlike anything she expected. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she asked the obvious question. Why would you help me? Silence. Long silence. Then the translator said something that changed everything. Because it wasn't about her. It wasn't about calm. It wasn't about money. I have a daughter. The emotion in his voice was undeniable, raw, real. They threatened her. Aisha's eyes widened. Suddenly, everything made sense. The fear, the lies, the panic, the obedience. The translator wasn't working with them. He was working for them, because they owned the one thing he couldn't risk losing, his child. Before Aisha could respond, the translator spoke again. And this time his voice carried urgency. They're planning something tomorrow. What? You need to leave Seoul. Aisha's heart pounded. Why? The translator didn't answer immediately. When he finally did, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because tomorrow is the day they stop watching you. Aisha frowned. That didn't make sense. Then realization struck. Her blood turned to ice. They weren't planning to stop watching her. They were planning to stop needing to watch her. The line went silent. Hello. No response. Hello. Then the call disconnected. Aisha stared at the phone. The apartment felt deathly quiet. Outside, rain began falling again. Softly at first. Then harder. Much harder. As if the city itself sensed the storm that was coming. Across town, inside a private office high above Seoul, Han Sung-min stood in front of a wall-sized window overlooking the city lights. A man sat across from him, a man Aisha had never met, a man whose face remained hidden in shadow. Han placed a folder on the desk. The shadowed figure opened it. Inside was a photograph of Aisha Carter. The man studied it for several seconds, then asked a simple question. "Are you certain?" Han nodded. "She knows too much." The shadowed figure closed the folder, and for the first time, smiled. "Then tomorrow—" He slid the photograph back across the desk. "We remove the problem." Across the city, Aisha sat motionless at her kitchen table. The translator's words echoed through her mind. They know about the apartment. They know about the train station locker. They know about the car. For the first time since discovering the conspiracy, she realized how badly she had underestimated the people she was dealing with. She had assumed they were powerful, connected, dangerous. Now she understood something far worse. They were organized. Every move she made was being tracked. Every precaution she took had already been anticipated. And if the translator was telling the truth, tomorrow wasn't just another day. It was a deadline. Aisha barely slept. Every sound outside her apartment made her sit upright. Every passing car forced her to look through the blinds. At 6 a.m, she finally gave up trying to rest. Instead, she packed a small backpack, passport, cash, phone charger, copies of the documents, a change of clothes. If she needed to disappear, she wanted to be ready. The problem was she still didn't know who she could trust. Certainly not Han. Definitely not the mysterious men behind him. Possibly not even the translator. That left exactly one option. Kang Dae-hyun, the man at the center of everything. The man everyone seemed desperate to manipulate. The man who didn't know he was being betrayed. If anyone had the power to stop this, it was him. The challenge was getting close enough to tell him. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. By mid-morning, the Imperial Crown Hotel was in complete chaos. The signing ceremony was less than 72 hours away. Executives flooded the building. Investors arrived from Tokyo, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Security teams conducted sweeps every few hours. Every employee was working overtime, including Aisha. As she pushed her cleaning cart through the executive wing, she noticed something unusual. Kang's personal bodyguards were gone. Not all of them. Just enough to create a gap. A small one, but a gap nonetheless. Aisha's heart began racing. This might be her chance. She turned a corner and spotted him. Kang Dae-hyun stood alone near a private conference room studying documents. No assistants, no executives, no entourage, just him. For perhaps 30 seconds, maybe less. Aisha knew opportunities like this didn't come twice. She pushed her cart forward. One step, then another, then another. 20 feet away. 15. 10. Suddenly, a voice exploded behind her. "Aisha!" She froze. The sound echoed down the hallway. Several people turned, including Kang. Aisha slowly looked over her shoulder. Han Sung-min stood near the elevator, smiling. The smile never reached his eyes. "Could you help housekeeping on level 47? Aisha immediately understood. This wasn't a request. This was an interruption. Han had seen her approaching Kang, and he wasn't going to allow it. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Kang surprised everyone. "Wait." Han's smile faltered, only slightly. Kang looked toward Aisha. "Do I know you?" The question caught everyone off guard, Aisha included. Han answered before she could. "One of our housekeeping employees." Kang ignored him. His eyes remained on Aisha. The hallway fell silent. Aisha knew this was her moment. Perhaps the only one she would ever get. "Say it. Tell him." warn him. Instead, she hesitated, not because she was afraid, because she suddenly realized she had no proof, only conversations, suspicions, fragments, and if she accused the wrong person, she might die for nothing. Kong waited, then slowly nodded, as if accepting her silence. That's what I thought. He turned and walked away. The opportunity vanished. Just like that. Han looked pleased. Aisha felt sick. 3 hours later, everything got worse. Much worse. Aisha returned to the employee locker room near the end of her shift. Something immediately felt wrong. Her locker door was open. She knew she had locked it. Carefully. Always. Yet there it was. Standing open. Waiting. Aisha approached slowly. The contents appeared untouched. Uniform. Shoes. Personal items. Nothing seemed missing. Then she found the envelope. Plain white. No name. No markings. Just an envelope sitting in the center of the locker. Aisha opened it. Inside was a single photograph. The image showed her apartment building, taken from across the street. Her blood ran cold. Another photograph. This one showed her entering the train station. Another. Her car parked outside a grocery store. Another. Her sitting inside a cafe 3 weeks earlier. The final photograph made her knees weaken. It showed her mother, back in Chicago, walking into a church. Aisha stopped breathing. For several seconds, the world disappeared. Nothing existed except that photograph. Her mother, thousands of miles away, completely unaware, completely innocent, and somehow connected to this nightmare. A folded note slipped from the envelope. Aisha opened it. The message contained only one sentence. Curiosity can be hereditary. Aisha's hands began shaking, not from fear, from anger, pure anger. Until now, this had been about her. Now, they had involved her family. That changed everything. That evening, she received another call. Unknown number. The translator again. This time he sounded panicked, more frightened than ever. You tried to approach Kong. Aisha frowned. How do you know that? They watch everything. His breathing sounded uneven. They're accelerating the plan. What plan? The translator hesitated, then finally said the words she had been trying to uncover for days. The signing ceremony is fake. Aisha froze. What? The ceremony doesn't matter. Her mind raced. But the investors, they're distractions. The translator interrupted. The contracts are distractions. The money is a distraction. Aisha's pulse accelerated. Then what was the real objective? The translator lowered his voice. Remember the list? Yes. They're stealing it. Aisha gripped the phone tighter. What is it? For several seconds, he remained silent, as though debating whether to tell her. Then he finally spoke, and the answer changed everything. The list contains the identities. Identities of who? The translator's voice dropped to a whisper. Every politician, every prosecutor, every judge, every executive, every criminal organization, everyone Kong has secretly paid, protected, blackmailed, or controlled for the last 20 years. Aisha's eyes widened. Suddenly, everything made sense. The money, the betrayal, the missing accountants, the disappearing files, the panic. The list wasn't valuable. It was power itself. Whoever possessed, it could destroy governments, destroy corporations, destroy lives, and more importantly, destroy Kang Dae-hyun. The translator continued. That's why they're doing this. Not for billions, not for the company, for the list. Aisha slowly sat down. The enormity of it hit her all at once. This wasn't a business conspiracy. This wasn't corporate fraud. This wasn't even about organized crime anymore. This was something much bigger, much more dangerous. Then the translator said something that made her blood run cold. "They're moving it tomorrow night." Aisha froze. Tomorrow, not next week, not during the ceremony. Tomorrow, the conspiracy was reaching its final stage. And unless someone stopped it, by this time tomorrow, the most dangerous list in South Korea would belong to the wrong people. The line went silent. Then the translator whispered one final sentence. "Aisha, you're running out of time." And for the first time since this nightmare began, she realized he was right. For nearly a week, Aisha had been reacting, listening, watching, surviving. But survival wasn't enough anymore. By tomorrow night, the list would be gone. The people behind the conspiracy would disappear. And Kang Dae-hyun would lose everything, possibly his life. For the first time since discovering the plot, Aisha made a decision. She was done hiding. The following morning, Seoul awoke beneath dark storm clouds. The weather forecast predicted heavy rain throughout the day, the kind of weather that turned the city gray and restless. By 7 o'clock, Aisha was already inside the Imperial Crown Hotel. She wasn't there to clean. She wasn't there to observe. She was there to reach calm, no matter what it took. As she entered the executive floors, she immediately noticed increased security. Twice as many guards, twice as many cameras, twice as much tension. Word had spread about the missing accountants, the stolen files, the emergency meetings. Even employees who knew nothing about the conspiracy could sense something was wrong. Aisha moved carefully through the hallways, searching, waiting, looking for an opening. It came unexpectedly. Near noon, a disturbance erupted near the main conference suite. Several executives began arguing. Security rushed to intervene. For a brief moment, attention shifted away from Kang's private corridor. Aisha moved. Fast. She pushed through a service entrance and entered a restricted hallway, one she wasn't supposed to know existed. The hallway led directly toward Kang's temporary office. Her heart pounded. Every second felt borrowed. She rounded the final corner and stopped. 2 bodyguards stood outside the office. Massive men, alert, professional. There was no way past them. At least, not normally. Then fate intervened. The office door opened. 1 bodyguard stepped inside. The second answered a call on his earpiece. For perhaps 3 seconds, neither was paying attention. Aisha moved. Before she could second-guess herself, before fear could stop her, she slipped through the office door. The room fell silent. Kang Dae-hyun sat behind an enormous desk overlooking the Seoul skyline. Several executives stood nearby. A legal team occupied one side of the room. Everyone turned toward her. The bodyguard spun around. Too late. Aisha was already inside. The atmosphere became instantly dangerous. 1 bodyguard grabbed her arm. Hard. "What are you doing?" Kang raised a hand. The bodyguard stopped. The room became silent again. Kang stared at her. Recognition flashed across his face. The janitor. Aisha nodded. She could feel every eye in the room fixed on her. Waiting, judging, calculating. Kang leaned back. "You've been trying to speak with me." It wasn't a question. A statement. Aisha swallowed. "Yes." The executives exchanged glances. Several appeared annoyed. One looked furious. Kang remained calm. Why? This was it. The moment she had risked everything for. There would be no second chance. Aisha took a deep breath, then spoke. "Because someone is betraying you." The room exploded. Executives immediately began talking over one another. Bodyguards stepped forward. Lawyers exchanged alarmed looks. One man laughed. Another cursed. Only Kang remained silent, watching her, studying her. Then he asked the question, "Who?" Aisha hesitated, not because she didn't know, because she finally understood how dangerous the answer was. Then she said it. Han Sung-min. Silence. Absolute silence. The reaction shocked her. Nobody looked surprised. Nobody looked confused. Instead, several executives looked afraid. Very afraid. As though they expected that answer. Kang's expression didn't change. Not even slightly. That frightened Aisha more than anything. Then he asked another question. How do you know? Aisha explained everything. The conference room, the false translations, the hidden staircase, the conversations, the document, the threats, the photographs, the calls, the list, every detail. No interruptions, no disbelief. The room listened. When she finally finished, nobody spoke. Several executives looked pale. Others stared at the floor. Kang remained perfectly still. Then, after nearly a minute of silence, he smiled. Aisha immediately knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Because it wasn't the smile of a man hearing shocking news. It was the smile of a man hearing something he already knew. The realization hit her like a truck. Kang slowly stood, walked toward the window, and looked out over the city. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost thoughtful. I've been waiting. Aisha frowned. Waiting? Kang turned. The smile remained. I'd been waiting to discover who Han was working for. The room went silent again. Aisha's eyes widened. What? Kang nodded. I knew someone inside my organization was moving against me. The words barely registered. For days she had assumed Kang was unaware. The victim, the target, the man being deceived. Now everything was changing. Kang continued. I suspected Han months ago. The room felt smaller. The conspiracy suddenly looked very different. Then Kang said something that made her blood run cold. The problem was never Han. Aisha stared at him. Then who? The smile vanished. Instantly, every trace of warmth disappeared from Kang's face. What remained was something far more dangerous. Fear. Not for himself. For what came next. Then Kang spoke a name. A single name. The name of the shadow figure. The man behind everything. The true architect of the conspiracy. Aisha had never heard it before, but everyone else in the room reacted immediately. One executive nearly dropped his phone. Another sat down abruptly. A bodyguard whispered a curse. And for the first time since entering the office, Aisha realized the conspiracy wasn't targeting Kang Dae-hyun. The conspiracy was targeting the entire network he had spent 20 years building, because the man behind it all wasn't trying to steal power. He already had power. He wanted something much bigger. Revenge. Then the office door burst open. A security officer rushed inside, breathing heavily, panicked. Sir. Kang turned. What is it? The officer looked terrified. The vault. The room froze. Every face changed. Kang's expression darkened instantly. What about it? The officer swallowed, then delivered the sentence nobody wanted to hear. It's already happening. Aisha felt her stomach drop, because whatever was inside that vault, whatever contained the list, the operation had already begun, and they were too late. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. For a brief moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the room erupted. Executives began shouting. Bodyguards rushed toward radios. Lawyers grabbed phones. Security personnel sprinted toward the door. Only Kang Dae-hyun remained calm. Terrifyingly calm. The kind of calm that appeared when a man finally reached the moment he had spent years preparing for. He looked at the security officer. How many? The officer swallowed. At least 6. Internal. We believe so. Kang nodded once. No surprise. No panic. Almost as if he expected the answer. The officer continued. The outer security teams are already compromised. Aisha's stomach tightened. Compromised, which meant the enemy wasn't outside. They were already inside the building. Kang turned toward his chief bodyguard. Lock down every floor. The bodyguard nodded. And Han Sung-min? The security officer lowered his eyes. He disappeared 20 minutes ago. The room went silent. Han was gone. The realization hit everyone at once. The betrayal was no longer a theory, no longer suspicion. It was real, and it was happening now. Within minutes, the Imperial Crown Hotel transformed into a fortress. Elevators stopped operating. Security checkpoints appeared throughout the building. Guests were quietly escorted into designated areas. No one was allowed in. No one was allowed out. Outside, rain pounded against the hotel windows. Thunder rolled across Seoul. The perfect cover for chaos. Aisha stood near the back of the room, trying to process everything. Then Kang looked directly at her. You heard them discuss the list. It wasn't a question. Aisha nodded. Kang walked toward a large digital display mounted on the wall. With a swipe of his hand, architectural blueprints appeared. The hotel, every floor, every corridor, every restricted area. Then he pointed to a location deep beneath the building. The vault. Aisha stared. The structure looked enormous, far larger than she expected. Kang's voice remained calm. Everyone assumes the list exists digitally. It doesn't. One executive looked surprised. What? Kang didn't take his eyes off the display. There is no server, no cloud storage, no database. The room fell silent. Then he revealed the truth. The list exists in only one place. Aisha felt her pulse quicken. Kang pointed toward the vault. Physical records. Several executives exchanged nervous glances. Kang continued. Names, transactions, relationships, secrets, everything. Decades of leverage, decades of power, stored in one location. Aisha finally understood. This wasn't theft. This was an attempt to erase an empire. Suddenly, another alarm sounded. This one louder, more urgent. A security officer rushed inside. His face had gone pale. They're already inside the lower levels. The room froze. A bodyguard cursed under his breath. Another immediately reached for his weapon. Kang nodded slowly. They moved faster than expected. The officer continued. We've lost contact with 2 security teams. The room became deathly quiet. Lost contact. Everyone understood what that meant. Someone had already been hurt, possibly worse. Then Kang did something nobody expected. He turned toward Aisha. You know the hotel? Aisha blinked. What? You've worked here for years. I clean it. Exactly. The room stared. Kang pointed toward the blueprint. Are there maintenance routes not shown on these plans? Aisha hesitated, then remembered. The hidden staircase, the service tunnels, the forgotten access corridors built decades earlier. Her eyes widened. Yes, every executive turned toward her. Aisha moved closer to the display. Her finger traced a section beneath the building. There. One of the security officers frowned. What's that? A maintenance corridor. It was sealed years ago. Aisha shook her head. No. The room stared. She pointed again. The door was replaced recently. The realization hit everyone simultaneously. Han, the hidden staircase, the secret meetings, the modern lock. They had been using the route all along. Kang's expression darkened. For the first time, genuine anger appeared in his eyes. They're using the maintenance tunnel. The officer immediately nodded. We'll intercept them. No. Everyone turned toward Kang. His voice had become cold. Deadly. No more mistakes. The room fell silent. Then he looked at Aisha. You'll show us. Aisha's heart skipped. What? You found the route? His eyes never left hers. You'll lead us to it. 10 minutes later, they were moving. A small team descended into the lower levels of the hotel. Calm, 3 bodyguards, 2 security officers, and Aisha. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The sounds of the hotel disappeared. No conversations, no music, no guests, only silence. And the distant hum of machinery. The maintenance corridor looked exactly as Aisha remembered. Narrow, concrete walls, dim lighting, old pipes running overhead. Except now something was different. The dust was gone. Fresh footprints covered the floor. Recent, very recent. They came through here. Everyone drew closer together. Weapons appeared. Safety catches clicked. Aisha's pulse thundered in her ears. Every instinct told her she didn't belong here. Yet somehow she had become part of it. A janitor standing beside one of the most powerful men in South Korea, hunting traitors beneath a luxury hotel. The absurdity would have been funny under different circumstances. Then they reached the vault corridor, and everything changed. The massive steel security door stood open, completely open. No signs of forced entry, no damage, no explosions, which meant only one thing. Someone had opened it from the inside. The room beyond looked untouched. At first, then Aisha noticed the bodies. 2 security guards, unconscious, one bleeding from a head wound, another barely moving. The team rushed forward. Kang entered first. Everyone followed. The vault itself sat at the center of the chamber. A giant reinforced steel container. Still closed. Still locked. For one brief moment, hope returned. Maybe they weren't too late. Maybe the list was still inside. Then a voice echoed through the room. Slow applause. Everyone turned. A figure stepped from the shadows. Elegant suit. Calm smile. Perfect posture. Han Sung-min. The room exploded with tension. Bodyguards immediately aimed their weapons. Security officers shouted commands. Han ignored all of them. His attention remained fixed on Kang. The 2 men stared at each other. Years of trust, years of deception, colliding in a single moment. Han smiled. You finally made it. Kang's expression remained unreadable. Where is it? Han laughed softly. You still think this was about the list. Aisha felt a chill run through her body, because Han sounded genuinely amused, as though everyone in the room still didn't understand the game. Then another voice echoed from deeper inside the vault, a voice Aisha had never heard before. Yet somehow she knew immediately. The shadow figure, the real mastermind, the man behind everything. And as footsteps slowly emerged from the darkness, every person in the room realized the true confrontation was only just beginning. The footsteps echoed slowly across the vault chamber, measured, confident, unhurried, the kind of footsteps made by someone who wasn't afraid, someone who already believed they had won. A figure emerged from the darkness, gray hair, impeccable suit, distinguished posture. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then one of Kang's executives gasped. Another stepped backward. A third looked as though he had seen a ghost. Aisha frowned. She didn't recognize the man, but everyone else clearly did. The stranger smiled. Calm. His voice carried familiarity, history, resentment. Kang's expression hardened instantly. For the first time since she met him, Aisha saw genuine hatred in his eyes. Not anger. Hatred. The older man stopped several feet away. Then he smiled. It's been a long time. The room remained silent. Finally, Kang spoke. You're supposed to be dead. The stranger chuckled. So I've heard. Aisha's pulse quickened. Dead. Who is this man? Then Kang said a name that instantly changed the atmosphere. Cho Min-soo. Several people lowered their eyes. Others visibly tensed. Even the bodyguards reacted. Whatever history existed between these two men, it was deep, very deep. Cho nodded. 20 years. He glanced around the vault. 20 years I've waited for this. Aisha suddenly understood. This wasn't business. This wasn't money. This wasn't even power. This was revenge. The most dangerous motive of all. Cho slowly walked toward the vault. His hand brushed against the steel surface. You built an empire. His voice remained calm. You became untouchable. Another step. You took everything. Kang didn't move. Cho stopped, then finally revealed the truth. You took my family. The room froze. Aisha felt the temperature drop. Cho continued. My wife. My son. My future. His eyes never left Kang. And for 20 years, I've waited for the chance to return the favor. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then Kang shocked everyone. He nodded. Slowly. Regretfully. Almost sadly. I know. The answer stunned the room. Even Cho appeared surprised. Kang took a step forward. Your family died because of information I acted upon. Cho's jaw tightened. You destroyed them. No. Kang's voice remained steady. The men I trusted destroyed them. The room fell silent again. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Cho's face. Only briefly. Then it disappeared. No. He shook his head. I spent 20 years finding the truth. His voice grew colder. And every path led back to you. Aisha watched carefully. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Because neither man was lying. Yet their stories didn't fit. Then another voice interrupted. The translator. Everyone turned. Until that moment, nobody realized he was standing near the rear entrance. The same frightened man who had spent the entire story caught between survival and conscience. His hands trembled. His face was pale. But his eyes looked different. Resolved. Cho frowned. What are you doing here? The translator swallowed, then looked directly at Kang. I need to tell you something. Cho immediately stepped forward. No, the translator ignored him. For the first time in years, he stopped being afraid. They lied to you. The room froze. Cho's expression darkened. The translator pointed toward Han, then toward Cho. They lied to both of you. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The translator continued. The list was never the objective. Aisha's heart pounded. Not again. Another twist. Another secret. The translator's eyes filled with emotion. My daughter wasn't kidnapped to force me to help steal the list. His voice cracked. She was kidnapped because she discovered the truth. The room became silent. Absolute silence. Then Aisha understood. His daughter. The real reason he had been forced into the conspiracy. The translator reached into his jacket. Bodyguards instantly raised weapons. Kang lifted a hand. They stopped. Slowly, the translator removed a flash drive. A small piece of metal. Nothing more. Yet, somehow everyone stared at it. The translator looked directly at Kang. This is what they're really after. Cho's confidence vanished. Han's face lost color. For the first time all night, they looked scared. The translator continued. My daughter copied everything before they found her. Kang frowned. Everything? The translator nodded. The original communications. The financial records. The orders. The names. Then he delivered the sentence that changed everything. The people who destroyed Cho's family weren't working for you. The room froze. Cho stopped breathing. The translator pointed directly at Han, then at several executives standing behind Kang. They were working for them. Chaos erupted. Several executives immediately began shouting. One tried to leave. Bodyguards blocked the exit. Another attempted to deny everything. Nobody listened. The translator continued speaking. Years of fear poured from him all at once. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal, finally exposed. And then Aisha saw her moment, the moment the entire story had been building toward. She stepped forward. The room fell silent again. Everyone looked at her. The janitor, the woman nobody noticed, the woman everyone underestimated, the woman who had heard every secret meeting, every lie, every betrayal. Aisha looked directly at Kong, then at Cho, then at every person in the room. And she began repeating everything she had heard, every altered translation, every hidden conversation, every meeting, every warning, every threat, every secret, one by one, word for word. The room became a courtroom. The conspirators couldn't deny anything because every statement matched evidence. Every conversation matched records. Every lie matched facts. For nearly 20 minutes, the truth poured out. And when she finally finished, nobody had anything left to say. The silence felt deafening because the truth had won. Before we see how this ends, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with money or influence. It's the one paying attention. 3 hours later, police units surrounded the Imperial Crown Hotel. Arrests began immediately. Corrupt executives, financial criminals, conspirators. Years of hidden corruption collapsed in a single night. Han Sung-min was led away in handcuffs. Cho Min-soo voluntarily surrendered, not because he feared prison, because he finally learned the truth. The people responsible for destroying his family had manipulated both him and Kong for decades. The revenge he spent 20 years chasing had been aimed at the wrong target. And somehow, the person who revealed it wasn't an investigator, wasn't a lawyer, wasn't a police officer. It was a janitor. Several weeks later, life slowly returned to normal. The headlines dominated South Korea for months. Political scandals, corporate corruption, arrests, investigations, resignations. The list changed everything. One rainy afternoon, Aisha stood in the hotel lobby, the same lobby where nobody used to notice her, the same marble floors, the same crystal chandeliers. Yet everything felt different. A familiar voice spoke behind her. You could have asked for anything. Aisha turned. Kang Dae-hyun stood nearby. No bodyguards, no executives, just him. He smiled. You saved my life. Aisha laughed softly. I wasn't trying to. Perhaps. He nodded. But you did. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Kang handed her an envelope. Aisha frowned. What's this? Open it. Inside was a property deed. Aisha stared, confused, then shocked, then speechless. Kang smiled. A fresh start. Aisha looked up. Why? The answer came immediately, because everyone else saw a janitor. His eyes reflected genuine respect. I saw the woman who paid attention. For the first time, Aisha smiled. A real smile, the kind that comes after surviving something impossible. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. And as she walked toward the hotel entrance, Aisha realized something. The most powerful secret she had uncovered wasn't hidden in a vault. It wasn't written on a list. It wasn't protected by bodyguards. It was much simpler than that. People reveal who they are every day. Most of the world just isn't paying attention. But Aisha Carter always was. And that's why she survived.